Hey, what's up guys? In this video we are going to be looking at delays in Ableton Live 10. A delay is going to be our first time-based effect, and it's also going to be the first effect that we're going to be looking at that has wet dry. So understanding that is very important. A delay you can get some really neat sounds out of, and what it does is it will essentially receive an audio signal and then delay its playback for a specified time. Why would that be useful? How is that useful? How do you do that? I'm going to show you. I'm going to learn you up. So let's go into the session view. I'm going to get rid of these MIDI tracks here and just have one audio track. I'm also going to get rid of these two sends. I'm going to go to the master and I'm going to drop in a limiter for safety. I'm going to give us a little bit of headroom and go into our audio track here. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into packs, and I went into core library up at the top, into samples, and then into drums, and I'm just going to select a conga just because it makes it easy to kind of hear what's going on. Okay, that's a good conga. Okay, we got that conga in there, and I'm going to hit play. And you will notice the playhead, or the play line, that thing moving, when it reaches that clip, it'll play. Nice. All right, we understand that. Let's make this workspace a little bit bigger so we can see. Oh, look, feel, zoom that display just a little bit, just a touch. Okay, so let's drop in an audio effect. And D for delay. I'm just going to drag that right on top of the clip, and it will make this thing. So don't look at what I'm doing. Don't look. Don't look. Okay, so let's explain what's going on here. So right now, the delay effect is on this channel. Now, remember how that line was moving across, and it was playing when it would reach this clip here? It's not doing that anymore. It's a little bit late. Right? And that is effectively, in essence, what a delay is doing. And you might be like, why is that even useful? Well, delays can do a bunch of things. So I need to kind of briefly explain what a delay is doing. So we're going to pretend, I mean, it's not that hard to pretend because it's essentially how it's doing. Let's imagine that this track is a piece of magnetic tape, right? Moving in the left or the right direction. It's moving this way, okay? Right? Right. This right here is the tape in question, and we're making a virtual tape echo. Right? Because this is how it was originally done. And when I show you this, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I know how it works now. So we have a record head, and this record head is a metal thing, and there's a magnet thing on there, and there's some wires and stuff popping out of it. I don't really know. But this is the record head. It is the record head right there. Okay, and what it's doing, like this tape is moving, and we're playing back this conga, it is actually recording this conga onto this piece of tape. Like I'm trying to draw it in here, right? All right, so what else is in a tape deck? There's another head, and that is the play head. And it also has a magnetic thing on here that reads the tape. And I'll just name that. This is the play head. It's right there. And that will actually be able to play back whatever's on the tape. And if this tape is moving that way, and you know, it really is, this thing will be printed, this conga slap, right, in our virtual tape diagram. When it gets over here, it will it will play and it will come out through whatever we're doing, right? So this will be recording it, and then this will be playing it. Record and play. And that's essentially, I guess maybe it was discovered by accident, where you would be recording something, and then you would have the playhead against the tape as well, and you would record it, and then there'd be a delay, and then you'd hear it, right? I think it was discovered by, I don't know the history. This goes back to the 40s. Who knows what was going on there? And that is essentially what's happening, right? So what if we were listening to what we were playing back into the record head, and we were hearing what was being played back from the tape head? Well, we would get the dry signal, right? And then this would be the wet signal. The tape would be the wet signal. The delayed sound would be wet. Okay, this is going to be very, very clear. So this right here, this is the, oh my goodness, this would be dry, and then this right here would be the wet signal, right? So these are just placeholder words. So dry is always, dry and wet, it's descriptive. And we use weird terminology in the audio world. So let's do that. Right here, dry wet is that vary control. Right now we're at 100%. What we are hearing is only what the playhead is receiving. We're not hearing what we're actually sending to the virtual record head. So if I have this set to 0, this will be 100% dry. What we're hearing is the conga. 100% wet, what we're hearing is the delayed conga. Okay, so 50-50, we're going to hear half and half. If I can get 50. So now we're going to hear both. Right? Okay, so what that does is that explains wet dry and the concept of delay. So there is a way, because this record head and this play head are, in the machinery, you know what I mean? Like they're always there, that you can't move them. What you can do is you can actually stretch this tape out, take this tape and move it and then wrap it around something, making this distance, right? This distance right here longer. And this would be the, I guess, time. It's time between the record head and the play head. So this would be, in our world, what we're going to be looking at right now is this record. This will actually be called the dry and then the wet. And then the time is the time between the dry and the wet, right? That's what people did. They would like stretch this out and make this tape a little bit longer to increase the delay time. Okay, so let's actually get into some delay fun stuff. There's a number of ways to change the delay length. And there is a synced delay time, and then there is a time delay time, which would be in milliseconds, right? Sync is directly proportional to your DAW's tempo and BPM. That's why this delay here just played right here, which would be perfectly on the grid in terms of what the project has. And we'll get into all that soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the sync here and make it time. And I want to point out first that this is a stereo effect, and when I'm moving these, I'm affecting the left and right at the same time. We're going to get into unlinking in a little bit, but I want to kind of demonstrate in the mono world that we can adjust the length of tape between the record and play, or the length between the dry and the wet. So let's do that now. So this is 375 milliseconds. And I'll just do this. right? Kind of neat. I'll make it shorter, 73 milliseconds, right? And we're getting into like slap territory. I can make it slower, right? And it's doing a thing that is what kind of tape does when it's stretching, if you can hear that. We're going to get into that a little bit later, right? Very slow, right? That's all well and good, and that is useful for like an unlinked asymmetrical kind of thing. If we have it really fast, it creates this strange robotic stuff, right? These things are basically a copy of it. They're stacked on top of each other, causing some phasing. But, you know, I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that. So fast in milliseconds would be a slapback. And this would be good for vocals and stuff like that. So let's actually sync it, because this is going to be a little bit more useful here. So these sync numbers are in terms of, if we look on the left there, they are beat divisions. So that's a whole bunch of text. And how I know how to kind of understand this is each one of these will just say 16th after it. So 1/16, 2/16, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll go back to 1. I'll just demonstrate that. If you want to see what that looks like on the actual grid, we will right-click and then go to 16ths in our fixed grid here. And this will make the grid 16ths in length. So this is, what I'm selecting is 1/16, so the delay will start here. And I'll demonstrate that. And I'll actually demonstrate that visually. What I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this channel. And then I'm going to right-click on this channel. I'm going to select freeze. And what this will do is this will render that channel in place. And when I say rendering, it will render the track after it has been affected by all the things in your chain. Pre-fader, I believe. So we're going to freeze that track. And this will kind of freeze it in such a way that I don't want to confuse you. Oh, I'm gonna actually flatten like in Photoshop. So now this is, yeah, this is 1/16, right? And we can confirm that the sound happens and then it is delayed, and then it's right there. It just plays twice essentially. Let's go on to something like 4/16. So how do we calculate that? Well, we just count 4/16. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So 4/16 would be a quarter. So that would be a quarter. So you got to kind of do math in your head, which I'm not too great at. Let's do the same thing. I'll duplicate that, and I will freeze, I will flatten, and I'll open that up there. Oh, no, never mind. Something happened. Oh, you know what? It's not going to let me do that, is it? I want to... The delay is too long for me to do that, actually. But please take my word for it. The delay goes there, and it works quite well. So, and that would be 4/16, which is a quarter. You can do 2/16, which would be an eighth, right? But you can just count the 16ths. So basically, these are just a way to get the divisions going on and have things kind of make sense. There's a number of different ways to write these out. But yeah, let's move on to something really cool that delays can do. All right, so we have our conga here and our 2 delay. I'll set that to 2/16. Right? It's playing back once. The delay is playing back once. We can have something called feedback, where the audio, this would happen in something called tape loops. The audio would be fed back into the input or the record section again. And what that would do is that would create somewhat of a tail. And I think it's just best for me to demonstrate that, we can increase the feedback, and you'll notice that there are multiple delays. That's pretty dubby, but yeah, that's the that's what the feedback does. And if you want a longer feedback, or if you want, you know, a longer amount of delays, you increase the feedback. Right? Something like that. Make it short, long, and that is dictating the fade out, which is pretty awesome. So let's bring that back down to 0, because now we are going to hit this button and we are going to unlink. Right? So the left and right are now independent delays. Okay, so I'll have this one set to 2, and yeah, this one wants to be 4, so I'll let it. So what's going to happen now is there's going to be a really cool stereo effect here. Right? And if I increase the feedback, we're getting some cool sounds there, and that is independent delays of the left and right. We can have one like time, so this is really doing some weird stuff. Right? And you can get into some really super interesting textures this way, especially when you get up to like really fast, unlinked time in milliseconds here. Right? Very reflective. Sounds reflective. Sounds like it's like a shower or something like that. It's really cool. So let's just link them again, and I'll go to sync. Right? So now we have this going on. Right? I want to show you something called ping pong. Now, ping pong will alternate. It'll take, you know, left and right, link together, and the actual wet signal, it will bounce back left to right. So it'll play one delay on the right and then one on the left. It'll just alternate. And this is also a really cool effect. Which is pretty neat, hey? So with all these different things, we can create, we unlink and have ping pong and some feedback, we will get a really interesting sound. Right? See how it can get very complex very quickly, and it makes a sound more interesting. So that is, you know, that's kind of like dub techno-y, you know what I mean? It's pretty dope. Let me look at my notes here. I want to talk about briefly the filter section here. So this is the filter section, and what it is it is a bandpass that has a very wide bandwidth adjustment. So essentially, it's a low pass and a high pass filter put together, essentially. And what it is applied to is the wet signal, and I will let you look at that right now. Right, so that is 100% of our wet signal here. We can engage the filter, and we can actually attenuate the high end, right? And just by moving this XY control, we can attenuate the low end, right? Or we can make it as a band pass sort of thing. Right? And that will make it not so busy. And this is done a lot for the delayed wet signal. So much so that you have this built into the effect because you're going to use it anyway. Right? So there's that. So it'll play the dry, and the dry won't be affected by this filter, by the way. Right? Right? But the delay lines will be affected by this filter, the wet signal. And that is really good for kind of, cleaning up that high end, because this high end up here, this will accumulate in your mix. It's not that great, right? I mean, if you're into that sort of thing. But, typically I'd like to kind of roll off the high end here. We're going to do that quite a bit as we explore more and more advanced effects, right? I'm going to set that there. There, that's cool. So let's look at the offset. Okay, so this offset deals with, I guess what you would say, what does it do? It changes the length of the delay to match a particular notation called either dotted or triplet. And in a future video, I'm going to be going over that. What it does is it changes, I'll just let you listen to it. So I'm going to set it to -33, and this, yeah, look at, what does it say? Yeah, it makes the delay more swung, but it kind of fits with a track if you have triplets going on, right? That's a little bit too intense. So it's da 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 da, right? As opposed to da 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 da, right? It's da 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 da, right? It's a completely different. Oh, actually, I can show you. So if I right click and I go triplet grid, the grid changes, and now it's something called 16th triplet. So that is essentially what that is doing. And then there's dotted and all that fun stuff. It's just a way of splitting up the bars and doing all of that fun stuff. And you get some really cool music doing that. That's what these do. It's going to become more clear in the echo version of this video later on down the line, because that's a more deeper tape echoey plugin. But delay, like before, delay, it was simple delay and then ping pong delay, and they just decided to merge them, which I think is pretty cool. So there is that. One thing I want to look at is the modulation. So there's a single modulation LFO here, and it can operate at 40 hertz to 0.01 hertz. And what it can do is it can modulate the filter and the time. So I'll just let you kind of hear what the time modulation does. I'll just go 100% wet. I want to play it. Right? I'll get a longer one there. That's pretty. Right? We're modulating that filter. Right? And that'll add a texture to the wet signal. But where it really kind of shines is the time modulation. And it'll adjust the time here. It'll still stick to this, but it'll kind of drift it a little bit. And this is akin to the tape head motor. Not the tape head motor. The tape spindle, whatever it's called. The thing that spins the tape and pulls the tape through the playhead. It's not 100% a speed all the time. It deviates. It's called, wow and flutter. And this will kind of emulate that, and it will give life to your delay. And that's pretty intense. And you can get some really wacky effects. Right, and that's pretty intense. Right. Subtle is good. Right, and you notice that my dry is quite, liberal. Like you never really go up to. I never really go up to 50%. I hover around, between 20 and 30-ish. because when we get into compression, it's actually going to make this delay a lot louder than it was, and that's a completely different video. So how this delay behaves, because you can automate almost anything in Live. You can automate these beat divisions here. So what would happen if you, while a delay was playing within the tape, you actually you stretched, you pulled the tape, or whatever they did, you changed the length of that delay time. What would happen? Well, it would stretch it out and it would sound kind of wacky. And that's what these modes do here. So repitch will repitch the virtual tape when you change the beat division. And I'll let you know what that sounds like. Right. And an even more obvious way to look at it would be to automate the time like this. So check this out. Right? And that's with repitch. With fade, it just kind of fades. Which is a different effect. And then jump is kind of like a classic way of how it used to work. It would just jump to it. Right? So repitch is actually pretty cool because you can do all sorts of stuff. And when you want to do some really cool stuff, you click on this infinity symbol. And what this will do is this will make it so I guess it's 100% feedback. So I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to let that delay go on. Oops. Oh, I might want to make it a little bit shorter. Oh, no, the sound needs to play, and then you need to enclose it in a black hole. There, and that will essentially go on forever. And with the repitch mode and the changing of the time, you can do that all the way to silence. So that is the delay in Ableton Live. And I kind of want to go over one more delay, because if you can understand this, you can get the next one, which is the filter delay. And this is a independent it's three delays put into one, and they each have an independent delay time and filter. They receive information from different parts of the audio, right? So this is one part, and then this is one part, and then this one is one part as well. And it's a similar concept where you have the left come in, there's a filter, and then there's the delay time, and then there's the feedback, and we can kind of all understand everything that's going on in there, right? And it's doing something interesting. So let's look at the left channel, and also you get to pan these, right? So this one's panned left, and I'll turn down the dry, because this is always outputting a wet signal. You just mix in the dry volume. It's a little bit different, right? Let's get this one like that, and we'll set the delay there. All right, and then the left and right input, I will just solo those, right? Okay, and then the right, we'll look at that. All right, so that's an interesting delay there. And these each have their own output volume, and they're independent for each channel here. And we'll just increase the delay, or the dry. Right? And that just creates a really interesting sound. Different divisions, and things are panned. We don't want them panned that much if we're going to be adventurous, right? So maybe like however much right. So this will dictate where in the stereo field it will be. And C is centered, so, you know, this would be directly center. Right? So with these filter delays, you can make a really interesting sound. So yeah, that is a brief introduction to the delay in Live. I encourage you to open it up and give it a go. The default, when you drop in a delay, the default will have a feedback of 50, right? So the most important areas would be feedback and wet dry, and I guess this section here, right? And just be wary of that. Everything else is kind of under the hood, just starting out. And if you want to sound cool, you can just get some ping pong going in there. And what this will do is this will just make sounds, you know, blend in more together. And I'll be demonstrating that in future videos. Delay is very useful. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope you learned stuff. See you in the next one.